the tariffs, they're intended to be disruptive of the status quo in terms of trade. And so what are the disruptions going to be? There's two sort of main things that we identified in our paper. One is that it's going to raise the price of medications and especially the things that are imported. And when you look at the products that are most imported, it's mostly generic drugs. So there's a lot of generic drugs that are coming from India and active ingredients that come from China. So you're increasing the cost of those inputs. Generic drugs only make up about 10 to 12% of our drug expenditures. So, even if they went up 10, 20%, it's still like 1/10 of our drug expenditures. So you can kind of think about the maximal effect it would have. We do expect that you'd see some increased production of those things in the United States. So maybe 100% of the tariff doesn't get passed on to the consumer. And the generic drugs are still a lot cheaper than the branded drugs. So there's still a big incentive for payers to make it convenient and easy to receive generic drugs. And even in my career, the generic copays are typically $5, and they've been $5 for 30 years. So that I think you'll still continue to see that. The other thing that there's a concern about is it does take time to shift supply chains. And even if there is sort of capacity in the United States to make more drugs, for things that aren't made here at all, there it would take time to like build new facilities, get new approvals. One of the executive orders was actually targeted at improving the speed to getting approvals of drugs, especially like generic drugs. So I think there was some understanding that that is an important thing. And that's my thought is that's one of the reasons why the pharmaceutical tariffs have been delayed relative to some of the other tariffs. But the concern is that if it's done too rapidly, the supply chains will not have time to adjust, and then you can end up with shortages of certain drugs that are exclusively sourced from overseas locations or that have ingredients that come from overseas. And so those shortages could then push you to use more expensive alternative branded medications, which could drive up costs as well. And I think the most concerning thing is that if we had shortages of essential things, and it could just disrupt the ability to treat patients most appropriately. So it's been a relief that the pharmaceutical tariffs have been delayed, and we'll see how this eventually plays out. The big wild card out there is public policy things, ranging from tariffs to executive orders around drug pricing. We don't expect to see much impact in 2025 either way. I think a lot of these things are going to be more of a long-term factor. Even the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed several years ago, we don't expect to start seeing a big impact from that until 2026 when the pricing with that goes into effect. One of the other, I think, policy things that we're keeping an eye on is the point of view around vaccines. So there's a lot of new vaccines that have become available in the last couple of years. RSV vaccine, new generations of flu vaccines, the COVID vaccines. So we did a special analysis on vaccines to see if there's big growth in that category. And what we found is the spending in those has actually been relatively flat over the last 4 to 5 years. So there was an increase when the pandemic happened and everyone wanted when the COVID vaccine became commercially available, there was a big increase. However, that did not continue to increase because there's less and less people getting the COVID vaccine. We're seeing some vaccine hesitancy. And then even though new vaccines have been introduced, the uptake hasn't been super rapid. And so overall, the vaccine spending has been pretty flat because of that.